January 17, 1944. Dawn spreads pale light across the frozen fields west of Caen. Frost clings to hedgerows and steel alike. Engines rumble low in the distance, not the sharp, metallic growl of a Maybach, but a steadier, almost industrial hum. German tank crews peered through periscopes and binoculars, breath fogging the inside of their fighting compartments, waiting for what they believe will be another wave of fragile American machines. Numerous, yes, but crude, unreliable, and destined to burn. They had been taught this certainty for years. To the men of the Panzerwaffe, armored warfare was an art, precision engineering, hand-fitted components, thick armor, and long-barreled guns. From the Panzer III to the feared Tiger, German tanks were conceived as battlefield masterpieces, few in number, devastating in effect. American tanks, by contrast, were dismissed as mass-produced compromises, lightly armored, undergunned, built by factories, not craftsmen, vehicles of quantity, not quality. And yet, in the gray light of Normandy, the machines advancing toward them refused to behave as expected. The M4 Sherman rolled forward steadily, one after another, engines starting without protest, tracks biting into mud churned by artillery and rain. Even after hits, some catastrophic, some not, new Shermans appeared by afternoon. By nightfall, the next morning, the same silhouette, the same sound, returning again and again. This moment mattered because it exposed a fundamental misunderstanding at the heart of Germany's war effort. The conflict was not only about tactics, bravery, or even individual weapons. It was about systems, about economies, about whether a nation could transform steel, oil, rubber, and labor into usable power faster than its enemy could destroy it. Germany entered the war believing superior design would overcome inferior numbers. The United States entered believing reliability, standardization, and production would decide everything. German tank crews expected American armor to fail under pressure, overheat, break down, run out of spare parts. They had seen early Shermans in North Africa suffer losses against experienced panzer units. They took this as proof of inferiority. But by 1944, what they faced was not a single tank, but a doctrine made of assembly lines and logistics. The Sherman was not designed to be the best tank on the battlefield. It was designed to be the tank that always arrived. Powered by dependable engines, often aircraft-derived radial engines or robust Ford V8s, the Sherman emphasized ease of maintenance. Crews could replace transmissions in hours, not days. Standardized parts meant a disabled tank could be repaired using components from another wreck. In German reports captured after the war, panzer officers repeatedly noted their frustration. American tanks returned to service with alarming speed, while German vehicles waited weeks for specialized parts that never came. U.S. Army records show that American factories produced nearly 50,000 Shermans during the war. At peak output in 1943 and 1944, the United States built more tanks in a single month than Germany could in half a year. This was not hidden, it was deliberate. Henry Ford himself claimed American industry could outproduce any enemy on Earth, and in armored vehicles, that claim proved accurate. German crews noticed it not in statistics, but in repetition. The same tank knocked out on Tuesday seemed replaced by Wednesday. A battalion destroyed in one engagement reappeared re-equipped weeks later. A war diary from Panzerlehr Division described American armor as mechanically tireless, a phrase rarely used for machines under combat stress. The emotional shock was not fear of the Sherman's gun. It was rarely superior to German cannons, but disbelief at its persistence. A Tiger might dominate a field for a day. The Sherman dominated the calendar. Reliability became its quiet weapon. While German tanks often suffered from final drive failures, fuel shortages, and over-engineered complexity, Shermans kept moving. U.S. logistical doctrine ensured fuel, ammunition, and spare parts followed closely behind advancing units. Even when outgunned, American crews trusted that their tank would start in the morning. This trust mattered. Morale in armored warfare is inseparable from confidence in machinery. German crews, once proud of their technological edge, increasingly found themselves guarding immobile giants, perfect machines stranded that broken bearings or empty fuel tanks. American crews advanced in machines they knew might be penetrated, but would rarely betray them mechanically. A recurring symbol followed German observers through the campaign: the engine sound. Not the roar of individual power, but the steady collective rhythm of hundreds of identical motors. Day and night, rain or dust. The sound of production itself made audible at the front. Captured German intelligence summaries of late 1944 acknowledged this reality bluntly. One report noted that American armored units sustain operational readiness despite continuous losses, attributing this to industrial depth rather than tactical brilliance. Another warned that destroying individual Shermans had no lasting operational effect. For some German soldiers, this realization was transformative. It eroded faith in the idea that technical superiority alone could secure victory. The war was no longer a contest of elite formations, but of national endurance. Against an enemy whose factories were untouched by bombing, whose workforce was fed, paid, and expanding, the outcome began to feel inevitable. The Sherman thus became more than a tank. It became a symbol of American democracy at war, not perfect, not elegant, but functional, replaceable, and sustained by a society organized around collective output rather than individual mastery. Where German tanks embodied brilliance constrained by scarcity, the Sherman embodied adequacy multiplied by abundance. By the winter of 1944-45, German crews often avoided engagement not because they feared a single Sherman, but because they feared the certainty of another wave, and another, and another. Reliability, once considered a mundane engineering choice, revealed itself as strategic power. When the war ended, many German officers reflected not on specific defeats, but on production figures, on factories beyond reach, on a nation that treated war as an industrial problem and solved it accordingly. The engine sound faded after victory, replaced by silence and wreckage. But its meaning remained. The lesson was not that the Sherman was invincible. It was that freedom, organized at scale, could produce enough reliability to overwhelm even the most formidable designs. In the end, steel did not win the war alone. Systems did. And somewhere in the memory of those frozen mornings near Caen, the steady hum of mass-produced engines became the sound of inevitability, the quiet proof that abundance, once mobilized, could not be stopped.